Welcome to a new deep dive, everybody. This time, we're exploring the world of prayer, and let me tell you, the texts we're about to unpack are full of seriously insightful stuff. And you know what the best part is? You don't even have to be particularly religious to appreciate the wisdom hidden within these pages.
Yeah, what strikes me is how bold the text is right from the get-go. Like, the preface doesn't hold back at all. It paints this incredibly vivid picture of St. Teresa practically up on a soapbox, shouting about how important prayer is.
It really grabs your attention, doesn't it? There's this urgency there, like this deep conviction that she just has to share this with the world. So what's the big deal? Why is prayer presented as this life-altering practice?
Well, the text gets right to it, highlighting two fundamental ideas. The first one is this: without grace, we can do nothing. With it, we can do all things. It's like grace is this wellspring of strength, this source of guidance that helps us overcome challenges and become the best versions of ourselves.
It's that extra something, that boost we all need to level up in life, right? So how do we tap into that?
And that brings us to the second big idea: prayer. Prayer, according to this text, is the key. It's like having a direct line to limitless potential, but we actually have to pick up the phone and make the call. You know what I mean?
So it's not just about reciting memorized words, right? There's this idea that there's a right way to pray, a way that truly unlocks its power.
Exactly. The text even addresses that feeling a lot of us have, that sometimes our prayers just seem to fall flat. But instead of saying that prayer itself is failing us, it suggests that maybe it's how we're praying that needs a closer look.
So it's not that the wifey's down, it's more about making sure our devices are connected properly. I like that.
Right. And to illustrate this point, the text uses this really powerful analogy, comparing ineffective prayer to a weak cry getting lost in the wind. It's about praying with our whole hearts, with this deep longing for connection and guidance, not just tossing out casual requests.
Infusing those prayers with real meaning, with sincerity that goes beyond just surface level.
And this is where understanding how to pray becomes so crucial. It's about cultivating a certain inner state, being open and receptive to that grace we were talking about earlier.
It's not just about the words themselves, but the state of mind we bring to the practice. And to really hammer home the importance of prayer, the text makes this really interesting comparison. It compares prayer to food.
Yeah, it's a striking analogy. Just like we nourish our bodies with food to live and thrive, the text argues that our spirits need sustenance too. And that nourishment, that food for the soul, is prayer.
They even quote some major figures in religious history, St. Augustine, St. Chrysostom. They both emphasize that going without prayer, it's like depriving our bodies of food. We become weak, lifeless, and, well, eventually.
Yeah. It paints a pretty stark picture, right? It's this powerful reminder that we need to make prayer a regular part of our lives, like a daily habit, not just something we turn to when things go wrong.
But here's something crucial. The text isn't saying we should just hole up and pray all day long. It actually emphasizes the importance of action.
Absolutely. It's like two wings of a bird: prayer and action, both equally essential. Without action, prayer is just wishful thinking, and without prayer, action lacks direction.
They work hand in hand, amplifying each other's impact.
And this is where living a virtuous life comes into play. It's not just about asking for things in prayer, but about aligning ourselves with something bigger, a higher purpose.
So we can't just pray for a better world and call it a day. We have to actively participate in making it happen.
Right. Taking action, guided by the clarity and strength we gain through prayer, that's how we can really make a difference.
It's all about finding that balance, the inner stillness of prayer and the outward movement of action, both working together. So let's explore some practical ways to make prayer a more meaningful and powerful part of our lives. Ready to dive in? So how do we actually do that? How do we go from simply knowing about prayer to actually experiencing its power?
Well, this is where the text gets surprisingly practical. It provides a framework for deepening our prayer practice, introducing different forms of prayer reading, meditation, petition, and contemplation. It's like different levels of engagement on a journey.
Oh, interesting. So there's not just one right way to pray.
Right. The text suggests starting with reading. It's like gathering kindling gear, sparking your curiosity, learning about the nature of prayer and how it's been understood across different traditions.
That initial spark, that desire to learn and understand.
Exactly. And then comes meditation. This is where you go beyond just absorbing information. You start reflecting on it, on what it means to you personally, how it resonates with your own experiences.
Taking those insights and starting to shape them into something meaningful.
Yes. It's about making the practice your own, connecting it to your own life.
Okay, so reading sparks our interest, meditation helps us really absorb the concepts. What's next?
Then there's petition. This is where we directly bring our needs and desires to the table. Those heartfelt cries for guidance and support we talked about earlier.
Ah, so this is where we lay it all out there, where we actually ask for what we need.
Precisely. And finally, the text describes a level of prayer called contemplation. This isn't just about asking for things, but about cultivating a deep sense of connection and understanding, a profound experience of grace.
Wow. It's like we've gone from reading about the feast to actually savoring each bite, experiencing the richness of the meal.
It is a beautiful analogy.
Yeah.
And it's worth noting that the text doesn't present these forms of prayer as rigid steps, but rather as stages of engagement we might flow through at our own pace.
It's not about checking boxes, but about embracing the journey, right? But this can't just be for monks in monasteries. Most of us lead pretty busy lives.
Exactly. And the text actually addresses that very concern. The worry that people deeply engaged in the world might not have time for prayer. And it offers a compelling counterpoint, using the biblical figures of Martha and Mary.
Ah, yes. Martha, always busy with preparations, and Mary, content to just sit and listen at Jesus' feet.
Exactly. The text reminds us that we need a little bit of both in our lives. Engaging with the world is important, but so is making time for stillness, for connecting with something bigger than ourselves.
Because if we're constantly running on fumes, ignoring that inner wellspring, we won't be much good to ourselves or anyone else.
Precisely. It's about finding that balance, that inner stillness amidst all the busyness, so we can truly show up as our best selves.
Which honestly can feel impossible sometimes. So how do we actually fit prayer into our already packed lives? Does the text give any practical tips for that?
Yeah, it's one thing to say, okay, prayer is important, but actually finding the time, that quiet space in the middle of our crazy lives, that's another story. Does the text give us any practical advice for making prayer a regular thing?
It really does. And it's surprisingly straightforward. It stresses the importance of treating prayer like any other important appointment. Put it on your schedule and stick to it.
So we're not just squeezing it in whenever we remember. It's about being intentional about it.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. It's about creating a routine that works for you. Maybe it's the first thing you do every morning, like setting the tone for your day, or maybe you find a few minutes during your lunch break to just quiet your mind. The key is consistency.
Right, finding those little pockets of peace like we talked about. But does it matter where we pray? Does it have to be some super serene, quiet place?
The text acknowledges that, finding the perfect spot isn't always doable, especially with our busy lives. It suggests finding a quiet space, sure, a place where you can minimize distractions, but it's more about the mindset you bring to it than the actual physical space.
It's more about that internal shift, that focus inward.
Exactly. It's about making a conscious effort to tune out the noise, even if it's just for a few minutes, and connect with something bigger.
Creating that mental sanctuary wherever you are.
That's a great way to put it. At the end of the day, the text reminds us that the true power of prayer isn't just in the words we say, but in the sincerity of our hearts, that deep desire for connection, guidance, grace.
Approaching it not as just another thing to check off our to-do list, but as a chance to really tap into something transformative.
And you never know what we might discover within ourselves and in the world around us.
It's an invitation to explore, to really experience the potential of prayer. Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.